13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
There it is, another one locked in, Bill. Another successful booking.
Yeah, this one was a little special for me.
Yeah, you go way back on this. Once we find that secret episode.
Yeah.
So you found. How long have you been listening to the guest tonight?
Well, I found him on. I think it was American Freedom Radio, which is an internet radio station. Like, I don't know, conglomerate is the right word. Like, if you have your own show, you can book slots on there, and they keep it running 24/7. I'm pretty sure that's where I found him. And so Chuck is kind of like the guy that introduced me, like led me to podcasts, really, because what else besides internet radio is there? Like, I mean, podcasts, right? Like, and this was 6 years ago, I want to say. So that's kind of like the genesis of me going down the rabbit hole. So yeah, it was really special for me to sit here and talk to this guy. He's been big inspiration for me, and kind of like going back to his answer about role models. Like, I can see a lot of what he's talking about with a lot of the people that, you know, I'm now booking for the show that, like, I had looked up to in the past, right? So yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, Chuck was just a big influence on my life. And then being able to call in, like, I was so nervous. I remember so nervous when I called into a show. The first time I had, like, written down notes of what I wanted to talk about, and
now you're interviewing him.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see it come full circle.
Oh, that would be great, just to whisper in your ear as you're all nervous getting ready to make the call. One day you'll be in his shoes and it'll be reversed.
Yeah. I don't know if I would believe it if someone told me back then. But yeah, so yeah, I support Chuck through his website. So
yep. Hopefully, and I can't see why you wouldn't. This was a really fun episode. I think you guys are going to dig it. You can learn more about Chuck over at Ochelli.com, Ochelli. It's also going to be baked into the show notes below. Whoop. Yep, right down there. You can go ahead and click. Browser should take you there. What else we got? 13questionpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to tell us how you liked the guest. I'm loving when you do this, Bill. I hear about the guest, and it's always a surprise. It's somebody that I haven't had any exposure to, and it turns out just to be a wonderful little surprise. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and his approach to the questions very, I don't know, unorthodox, but in a good way. Like, I appreciated it. I appreciated that.
Do you want to dive straight into appreciation?
Yeah, we can do that. Do you have the magic jingle?
The magic Felix sauce?
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
Thank you, Felix. Check out Felix at, what is it, sirfelix.bandcamp.com? Right?
That is correct.
So did you have one that was burning in your mind?
I do.
Yeah.
And it comes directly from the guest tonight. And it's something you just mentioned there, which is why I felt like a segue might be good. It's the way he answered the questions, and I had never looked at some of these questions in the way. I mean, one of the questions is still incredibly valid. It's an incredibly useful tool, but at the same time, after tonight, I'm like, we should just throw it out.
Right.
That's no good. We can't use that anymore. But so yeah, just I don't know, surprise and new perspective and being able to see something and be so familiar with something that you've gone over so many times that if somebody come in and just drop a different perspective and you shift that prism and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's not white light. I see color.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
Chuck's got a way of doing that with a lot of topics. That's what drew me to his style of radio show, just the way that he makes you think differently.
Yeah, he made me
Like-
completely reconsider a question.
In something that we're so familiar with, too, or at least that we think that we're so familiar with. And it doesn't even have to be like the question necessarily. It could be, something else that, a tangent that got brought up, or, another topic or whatever he's talking about in his show, right? It's just that different angle, a different perspective.
Exactly. It was great. It let me see there was a little like post in the ground that I hadn't seen was there, but it was an immovable fact that's there and now part of perspective. And I'm like, oh, that's cool to discover that. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for. Just that, whatever that, seeing the same thing, new surprise, new information, reinterpretation, all of that discovery wrapped around, I don't know, it's the simple things in life.
So it's refreshing too. It's like a nice breeze.
Yeah, how many other things do you think you fully understand in your life that with a new perspective and a new angle would change completely and dramatically? And then what does that perspective give you? What reality does that look like? I mean, we're all living in mind cages. We're all locked in by finances and rules and laws. And ultimately, at the end of the day, those are just thoughts and ideas that people have all agreed upon that we then agree upon to take the burden of. But if you just consider yourself a human being in an ecosystem on a planet flying through outer space, I mean, what is a credit card?
Yeah. Like I said, we're all about different perspectives, and this was just a really good
It was a good
example of how if it doesn't make you completely like, I don't know, it at least has to make you second guess some things, right? Instead of completely altering, maybe at least throw some doubt on something that you thought maybe you knew in a different context, but yeah. Mine came from the show also, and this type of gratitude, I don't know if necessarily I've avoided saying it on the show, but sometimes when I'm trying to think of gratitudes, things that pop into my head that don't exist, like being grateful that something isn't the way it could be, is a gratitude. I don't know if that's a way of cheating or not. I don't know. Maybe I've asked this before on an intro. I don't remember. If I have, get at me on Discord or whatever. But just not being caught up in the criminal justice system. Like Chuck and I both had experiences. His more so than mine. Compare if we're going to compare the two, but that's not necessary. But going back to his answer about being the humbling experience, and just being grateful that isn't where I am. Locked up with no freedom, completely powerless. You don't have any control over when you eat, sleep, or anything. Like, so I'm just grateful that I'm not in that situation, especially in like some states, like the prison industry complex. Like there's people that are slave labor, especially out in California. I've heard stories, so I'm just grateful that I'm not there. And sometimes that's enough to change your mindset if you're having a rough time. Is think of something that's worse and then be thankful that you're not experiencing that. I don't know if that's a way of cheating. I don't know. What do you think? I don't want to call it cheating, but
I
maybe
think
it's just not.
I think it's perfectly acceptable, and I think you should not be ashamed if this has been an answer before. It's such a powerful thing. I mean, think about it. You know, both you and Chuck had the same answer essentially to this question. It was deeply meaningful and impactful, and is something that is going to follow you. And I mean, we don't live. I mean, it's not always so simple. You can get caught up in a system where it could be as simple as you picked the wrong plant and put it in your pocket, and somebody looked in your pocket. That could land you in jail for life. So it's a very nuanced world, and you need to know all the rules. And so it's very humbling to know that you're not caught up in that system, that, you know, you've somehow managed to navigate and to be out. And you've had the perspective of seeing what it's like to having the experience of it. And I I can't imagine that's something that you don't think about on a semi-infrequent basis.
It pops into my head every now and again. Not because I want it to, it just does. Maybe it does because I need it to. I don't know. But yeah, that was my gratitude. Also coming directly, for more or less directly from the show, from this interview. And Chuck also talked about value for value, which is a phrase that we toss around a lot, but it was nice to hear him bring that up unprompted, right? So we're talking about supporting the show. We would encourage you to do that in any way that you feel like giving value back to us, time, talent, treasure, right, Adam?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I cannot imagine the amount of, I don't even know what to put it. Chuck does this 5 days a week live. I mean, that is a whole new caliber of being able to converse and conversate and stay fresh, new, and not be repetitious. So yeah, he's anyways.
And he does it with 10% of his vision. He's blind. I don't know if this is the intro. It comes up in the it comes up in the interview, so I'm not throwing him under the bus, but you got to admire that. It's like he was saying, like, if he can do all this stuff, like, then what's your excuse for letting him beat you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, support the creators that you love, because if you don't, they won't exist. You got to water the plants and hopefully turn them into big, thriving systems that get to produce and give you more fruit and better fruit and more beautiful trees, shade, and I don't know, maybe one day you can build a house out of us.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't even have to be. The idea is to get a lot, or the idea is to get a little bit of water from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not asking for, tons of support, tons of
well, it's
if
whatever,
you want to, we're not going to stop you. But
whatever value you can give, we will appreciate. You are building an amazing thing, and we want to make it better. Oh, and speaking of building, I don't know if we mentioned it, but Bill, I had a mixer donated to the show by one of our previous guests, Andreas Lopez. That one's probably already gone out by the time that this one goes out. So yeah, that's going to be flying your way. So awesome. True value for value from a guest. He greatly appreciated being able to participate in the show. So yeah, he had an extra of the exact mixer that we're getting you. So yeah, it'll be on the way soon.
That's a little synchro there, right?
Yeah. Dude, you have no idea how excited I am about that, because I'm running that mixer on top of my other mixer, which is funny because I got that other mixer from the same guy. He must be like the mixer king or something. What am I saying? The same guy. I work with him. I can call him that guy.
Well, thank you, Andreas. It will be put to good use.
Value for value. And speaking
Yeah,
of which, tell your friends, tell people that
Yep,
you
share
want
the
to
show.
come on the show, have them reach out to us or give us their names, their contact information. And yeah. Ooh, got another lead from that guy. So expect us to have another one incoming or me to be facilitating the contact for you, Bill.
Awesome. Yeah, guys. Support the show anyway that you see fit. If it's a cup of coffee that you can donate, or the price of a cup of coffee, you can donate that through the website, 13questionspodcast.com. There's a support tab there, or just share the show. That's also supporting us, spreading the word.
And join us in the Discord, on the Telegrams, all over the semi-non-stream, mainstream socials. And yeah, it's all in the show notes right there, or 13questionspodcast.com. I think that's it, Bill. I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode, unless you got anything else there for us this evening.
No, I think we're good to go. You guys are gonna. I hope you enjoy it. I know you guys will. It was a fun one for me.
Yeah, dude. Anytime I can get my mind, like, my God, like, how many episodes are we in? And I'm completely reevaluating one of the prime questions that has always been there since day one. So yeah, that to me made the entire episode well worth it. Forget about how interesting a guest Chuck was. So
yeah, if we're gonna reevaluate one of those questions, maybe a listener could suggest a new one for us. Tell us what you think.
I like it. The question got KO'd. No, I still think it's an incredibly valuable question. And the fact that I was able, well, you'll see. You'll tell me if you evaluate the question the same way, but I think it just brings more depth to the question and dichotomy to it, because it has clearly it becomes a two-wayed or mirrored somehow. The answer becomes a dichotomy of sorts. I can't even answer it, but I like it.
Yeah, it's definitely a mind bender. You guys will enjoy this one.
So, on that note, tonight, Chuck Ochelli on 13 Questions. All right, Chuck. Well, welcome to 13 Questions. You ready for the first one?
Absolutely.
What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
Well, I got to tell you, the best advice changes at different parts in my life, because there's been plenty of people willing to offer advice. I got to tell you, most of it is fairly useless, because my circumstances always seem to dictate something that makes the advice not apply. But I can tell you about the coolest advice I ever got, which might have been the most useful at the time. And a little bit of backstory: I was a musician, and there were only 2 autographs I ever wanted from other musicians. Given that I was mainly a hard rock heavy metal guy, although I did all sorts of music, I was content to get the autographs from Ozzy Osbourne and Lemmy Kilmister. And when I met Lemmy, he basically told me that, if I really love doing it, if I really love being a musician, that I should just always keep going and go for it all the way. Now, that's not exactly what he said, but in Lemmy speak, that's pretty much what he said. And it was very plain. It was very simple. It's not uncommon advice, if you love what you do and all that. But it gave me a lift. And at the time I met him, it was pretty funny because I was kind of at a low point and had just, gotten a free ticket to go see the Bastards tour. And I was just thrilled to meet him. And I told him, did the whole, like, oh, well, I'm a musician, and that's what he came out with, and I felt really good, even though I was really down on my luck at that time, not making any money, had actually no physical place to live, and was just like at the Motorhead show, and gave me the strength to fight through a tough time where I got back on my feet and got back to doing what it was I needed to do. So that was the most useful advice and the coolest advice at that time, I would say.
No, I like that because it wasn't even necessarily the advice, but it's the relation of who it's coming from and the circumstance that makes the advice land in a different way.
Right. I mean, and circumstance, today, does that matter? Well, not really. I'm not a musician anymore. And I'm not trying to make a living in the music business because, if you go all in, the way I see it, I mean, I wound up doing so many different things as a musician. It was tough to be a performer and also be a bouncer. And yeah, I ran the metal night over at this place. And okay, I swept up floors, worked behind the bar, did security. Already mentioned bouncer. Bookings, managing bands, whatever it is I had to do to scrape up a little bit of money out of the business I wanted to stay immersed in. So I did all that, and I was a performer. But at the time I went, it was just kind of like, I'm going to go cheer myself up by going to a Motorhead show, which I don't have to pay for because thank God I don't have, I think I had enough for one beer that night. And so I had one beer at the Motorhead show. And yeah, I mean, I was happy. And it was useful in that it gave me a little bit of inspiration. So, but today, as I do what I do, and previous to that, maybe it wouldn't have been useful advice, but it was very useful at the time.
What do you choose to ignore?
That's an awesome question. What do I choose to ignore? A lot of people would say that they would ignore other people's advice. Kind of links back to the first, the first question. But I don't necessarily ignore, even though I did already say that most people's advice tends to be useless when it comes to a lot of things in my circumstances anyway. It's funny. I don't know what I choose to ignore because I'm ignoring it. And I thought about that when I read this question ahead of time, and I said, what is it that I would say I really ignore? Because actively ignoring something kind of means you had to pay a little bit of attention to it in order to avoid it. This is my ridiculous arguing out loud with myself, which is what I do all the time. So honestly, I'm not sure what I ignore because I'm ignoring it full on.
It's a fair answer. Yeah.
That's the most logical answer to the question at all.
Exactly.
Essentially, you just made me even question the question itself.
Right. Throw it out. We need a new question.
Yeah, exactly. Like what is that garbage now?
No, that's
a great view. Like it makes sense. I love it.
Anyway, sorry about that. Didn't mean to play judo with you. It's just I love it.
I love it when guests have a new approach. Go ahead.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great though if you had some little, like, I don't know, magic crawler or something that could go through your brain and find those things that you were ignoring?
Yeah, that's almost like you got to ask somebody else what you're ignoring. Because if you're really ignoring it, then you're paying it no mind, And I'm sure there's a ton of things I pay no mind to, but unfortunately, I don't know what they are because if I'm trying to actively ignore something, it usually means that I found it distasteful, disgraceful, ridiculous in some way. And that means I had to have examined it at some point. So total ignorance of it, I don't have. Ignorance is ignorance. And if you're really ignoring something, you're totally unaware. And quite frankly, I envy people that can ignore much of what goes on around them. So, or the world, or, anything, actually.
Hey, I think
I don't know. I feel like I don't ignore much.
I think it's kind of baked in though. How many people have a bad relationship and they're like, oh my gosh, look what happened. And people are like, yeah, we saw it coming, oh yeah. It's like, wait, how come you saw it and the person involved never sees it? It's this weird human, human where you can't see the forest through the trees, if you will.
Right. So it's to me that the question's problematic because I don't know what I really ignore. That's it.
What book has been most influential on your life and why?
Yeah. Okay. So there's no singular book. I've read so much that I've got, it's really weird because, I'm visually impaired, legally blind indeed. And still I made the effort to read books. And when I'm interested in a subject of any kind, I don't read one book, everybody knows anybody who knows me at all knows I'm interested in the JFK assassination and research on it. So I stopped counting how many books I read on that, around 300. And really, I don't know how many I've read on the subject. There are many. There's probably a couple thousand out there now. At one time, I could easily say there was just over 1,000, but now I know there's more than that. They keep coming out, and that's the thing. I get interested in a subject matter, I go off into all sorts of directions. And I don't think there is a singular book that's influential in my mind. If I looked at favorite books, that's another funny thing. I don't really have a favorite book. All of them are useful. Otherwise, I don't finish reading them. I'll tell you one of the biggest mind benders, though I'm not a Christian, was to sit down and read, the King James Bible from end to end. But I don't believe that had the greatest influence on me. It did create a whole bunch of mind bending things where I was looking up terminology and going into non-canonical stuff about it and examining, the Gnostic scriptures, so to speak, and stuff like that, and trying to fit different pieces in. And I did all that when I was, 11, 12 years old. And, but I wouldn't say it was a great influence exactly, except it got me to examine that as a piece of literature, and try and reckon with the fact that this is highly influential on other people. See, other people are pinned down to one book, one author, one set of books. A lot of people are. I can't see how I could set one aside from the other, because to me, they all lead into another thing. Even when I was reading the JFK stuff, right, I would start trying to contact people in the book to see if their story was exactly as it was written. And I've done that outside of the Kennedy assassination to other historical events. Let me, try and speak to the surviving relative. What are some of the things that the law enforcement people had to say after Waco privately? Things like this. I've just reached out to people, even not for my radio show or anything. I reach out to people and test their stories. I like to listen to people's stories and take from them what I can. And I realize that everything is a matter of perspective. And even when somebody is giving me an academic book or an instructional book or a textbook that is meant to, reinforce or support a discipline, it's all a matter of context. So a singular book, I don't got an answer for that either. It sounds like I'm avoiding your question.
No. Look, there's no wrong answers. Is there any particular rabbit hole you've gone down that's been, life-changing?
Yeah, that would absolutely be the Kennedy assassination. And the reason is that, again, around the 25th anniversary, which was in 1988, and I was about 17 years old, I thought maybe I could read up on this and solve a whole bunch of arguments I was hearing from people. And quite frankly, started out on the side of thinking, yeah, it probably is this one lunatic that took a shot at Kennedy and got him. Because that's the kind of world in which we live, where random chance makes a lot of sense. And the further I went into it, and the rabbit hole of that transformed into something very personal, and not just because it was the Kennedy assassination, by the way, but looking into my own father's death, which coincided with this, where he had committed suicide when I was 4. But there were some very strange things about that. I had to, on the fly, kind of teach myself how to be a criminal investigator. Where is it you find out the information about the autopsy? Can you actually get a hold of those materials? All this kind of stuff came together at the same time. And it changed my viewpoint on the system, which I knew was broken, but I didn't know exactly how deceptive it was. Gave me the idea that it's not all about good guys and bad guys all the time, but sometimes it's about bureaucracies that are not designed to do anything but bureaucracy. Profoundly, it just reaffirmed every single thing that I felt instinctively from my earlier age, that, look, government doesn't care about me. The world doesn't care about me. If you're poor, go to hell. And by the way, if you want the truth, also go to hell. And you're never going to get those that are in power to admit that they've done something that might dislodge them from that power. Admission is for honest people, not for governments, not for agencies that are clandestine, not for sinister individuals, not for people who value profit over blood. And so honestly, yeah, that's the rabbit hole that definitely kept reinforcing, kept changing, kept evolving my education, on my own in a do-it-yourself fashion, where I had to learn everything from forensics and biology to how it is exactly that the CIA sends their documentation through systems. What do the paper documents actually represent? Filing. How about ballistics? How about, various things about how you can learn exactly what the condition of a particular place was at a particular time. What are public records versus things that are not for public consumption? A whole lot of stuff, media studies, and I went through all of it as best I could. And I don't claim to be any sort of expert, but I'm adequately trained to hold a conversation with people that are experts in a lot of fields because of it. So I would say that, that was the rabbit hole that definitely shaped my future.
Sounds like it showed you a lot of truths and this is why I enjoy listening to your radio shows, because you've come to realize that the government doesn't love you, right? Nobody's there to take care of you. The difference between good and evil versus like bureaucracies, and so with that work coinciding with the events in your personal life, was there like a lot of synchronicities and things falling into place around that time that you went down the rabbit hole for you?
Well, yeah, okay, so I'll get a little more specific. When I was leaving high school, which I actually graduated, that's all I have is a high school diploma, basically. And I was leaving high school and thought about going to college. Now, assuming that my father had been a veteran of the Vietnam War, I was handicapped, which I am. I'm handicapped since birth. I assumed that there might be some government help for me to go to college, right? So I went and applied for a couple of things and started getting letters from my own government telling me that I could be prosecuted for asserting that I had rights to some benefits as the child of a veteran, when there was no proof that he would ever serve. Now I got those letters, and at that time I was holding his dog tags in my hand. I had, photographs of him in Vietnam. And the Department of Defense essentially said there was no record of him ever having served. And I went to them and tried to get it. And yes, indeed, there was no record. Now you got to fast forward some years, and apparently, and I did make several requests for different records with the Army and this and that, and came up empty-handed. Sometime in 2004, when they were moving documentation at the DoD, and the Army was actually contributing to the collection of stuff for the Vietnam War in 2004. My father's military record resurfaced, and it's loaded with a bunch of inaccurate information. Um, and I started going on a journey to try and find out what the truth was there. I come up with the fact that he was actually pulled into military intelligence as a sniper because he had a natural skill with a weapon, which they found out when he went into the Army. He was supposed to go in for construction. And they fabricated a basic record is what they did. And I will not know exactly what that man did in Vietnam during the time he was there. I know he went in right after the Tet Offensive had knocked our troops on their heels. I know that he was definitely trained and part of a sniper team. But I don't have records for this stuff. I actually tracked down somebody else after I showed his picture on the internet that knew him. And was able to fill in some of the blanks and told me that he was surprised that any of the military records ever resurfaced for any of the people on the team. But anyway, this gives you an indication that, and I'm not saying my father was a significant person. He was very well damaged when he returned, resulting in his suicide a few years later. And I think there's probably some things that he was involved in that, are not meant to ever surface. And, there you go. You learn right away that it doesn't matter. He was disposable. Anybody else who was part of that was disposable. And this isn't even like a significant event in history where I can claim that he was part of it. I did try and track down something interesting about a significant event in history, which, because oddly enough, right after he goes in, the King assassination happens, and there was a fire team present in Memphis that day. And I actually found that my father had maybe been in that area, but he was not part of that military intelligence sniper team. So, but here we go. There's a lot of shadowy stuff, and this is, I was 4 years old when he died, so I had no direct knowledge of it personally, but you start digging around, and all of a sudden you find out that official stories, large and small, are mainly there to perpetuate mythology, to perpetuate cover stories that are much better than the ugly truth. And it's not just governments. Corporations do this. Quite frankly, though, my experience with true organized criminals tells me that they're a lot more honest and upfront about what it is they do than most of the legitimate infrastructure of what we call society. And I'm not saying that they're always honest, but at least you can see them coming.
There seems to be more of a code there, whereas bureaucracy will just roll over anything without a second thought.
Well, when you have ultimate power, you are outside of the normal constraints that everybody else operates in. You're not going to get prosecuted if it's decided not. So you've got a lot of leeway.
Right. And it also grants you the ability to pass things off because, by the time I'm searching and investigating in the later 80s or in the 90s regarding my father, the people that would have handled this in the early 70s, they're gone. So these people are just acting on what's left there. And look, ever after, even in just military circles, which, there is a whole deep, dark thing to the military. There's a whole deep, dark thing, obviously, to the intelligence agencies and just regular bureaucracies to begin with. And when it becomes a generational thing, without a great deal of effort by a serious, honest scout, say, in the system, you're never going to get at this stuff. Which doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, and doesn't mean that occasionally you won't kick something loose that will lead to something being accomplished. So I never stopped trying, but But the fact is, you got to understand the machine that you're up against here, and it's way larger. And once you get into another generation, nobody that was involved with my father directly would have cared about keeping those records from me for 20 more years, 30 more years. It didn't matter. It was a fabricated nothing anyway. They gave him an honorable discharge when, quite frankly, he had walked away. He had grabbed his local file and walked away from an army base, which meant that he was absent without leave at the very, at the minimum, if not generally a deserter. They didn't want to deal with that. They wouldn't have prosecuted him for it because maybe it was better to let him go into obscurity. And the cover file allows that to happen. And you know what? Again, nobody would know my father's name. Nobody would care. You guys wouldn't care about that story, except it's kind of interesting. But the fact, because he's not part of some headline event that I know of. But there's millions of him.
Mm-hmm.
There's millions of me. So, here we are. This is the way it goes. And if it can get covered up, it can stay covered up. But again, I still say it doesn't mean don't continue to fight the good fight, whether it's over personal stuff or, it's over benefits that have not been paid or whatever else. And I gave up on that years ago. So I have no idea if I was owed benefits or what, but it wasn't about that. It was really about
it takes an act of Congress to get that kind of stuff. Angie has a lifelong friend. He's passed now, but he was sprayed with Agent Orange in Vietnam, got every single possible side effect you can imagine, ended up wheelchair bound, and she had to literally go to Congress before Congress to get him benefits. Any benefit, to have him labeled as being 100% disabled. And it was insanity. And when she got there, the congressmen were like, why? why are you even here? And that was just how broken the system was. It's so sad to see.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, there's a bunch of details that I haven't discussed anywhere about what I do know. Again, say about my father's activities, but he wasn't necessarily the most significant cog in the machine. I can tell you that in Vietnam, it goes well beyond the heroin distribution store. The American gangster story that everybody knows about, heroin being imported very cheaply and quickly and plentifully into the United States. I can tell you that my father knew about that and never dealt with, the American gangster guy, Frank, whatever his name was. There was a lot of drugs. There was a human trafficking aspect there. There's all kinds of dark, deep, dirty stuff that went on with the Vietnam War, which, hardly anybody wants to talk about now. Because why? Ended in 1976. Why are you talking about this, right?
I'm going to tell you that your father's story is even more fascinating to me on that angle because, it just shows that the meat grinder of the system and how systemic it is. It functions to make itself live and follow its rules and keep power. It's refreshingly disgusting to see that because I don't think enough people appreciate how co-opted and corrupted the system is.
Well, see, and I got harsh mixed feelings about this because, simultaneously I understand that the system just chews up people like him and like everybody else that doesn't have a privileged position. And I know that happens. And when he signed up, which he volunteered, wasn't drafted, when he signed up, he tried to sign up early. Then he went back again at, when he was of age. And when he went in, he had this idea that he was going, as dumb as this sounds to me today, he had an idea that he was going to, fight communism still. Okay. And I understand people that sign up for that, with the best of intentions. And I am extremely disgusted by the treatment of anybody who's served. Not because I'm into hero worship, because I find that repulsive as well. But here's the thing. You're going to send people through the meat grinder, you better pay for your hamburger. And that's the way it is. And whether, they're spiritually or psychologically or physically mutilated, that's the price they paid. And some of them with very good intentions. Now, that does not mean that everybody that puts on a uniform is an absolute hero in my mind. There is a mixed bag of individuals that do that. But some, you want to pay them real honor, then don't give them parades and don't blow off firecrackers. How about you get these guys some help when they come back and, really take care of them and fix the VA and fix the way that these guys should not end up on the streets after they do the dirty job that nobody wants to do. I am very much of that attitude, but I'm also not a hero worshiper about it. Simultaneously, I'll tell you that I would never recommend a single individual that I think has any value at all to sign up for the military. I would never recommend that to somebody, because you become a tool of the system, whether you realize it or not, and you become a warrior in a war that's got nothing to do with you. And if you're lucky, you get to be mutilated one way or another. So I don't recommend it. I don't, disparage people personally that did it. But at the same time, I recognize that as per usual, the system is loaded, and it is definitely loaded and aimed at you directly. And that you is any of us that don't have the money to buy our way outside or get the results within it. So anyway, I'm sorry. I went off on a kind of a tangent there.
No, that's fine. And very well said. Very good tangent. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think it's important?
See, what rule do I have? I mean, I gotta ask a question on the question. A rule do I have? It's a rule for what? I mean, there's lots of rules. We all got different rules that we have for ourselves, hopefully just for ourselves, and we haven't just adopted them from other people's idiocy. But I mean, what kind of rule are we looking at here?
Some people
a rule in life.
Well, some people say something like, I never eat after a certain time. I only eat in 12-hour fast window, or, I'll never murder anybody. Some people just have, I don't know. It's, I try to have a rule, and I guess it's revolving around food in my mind now, but I try, after I eat, to wait an hour to 2 hours before going to bed. That's a solid rule that I stick by, or I try to stick by.
Usually people will focus more on ethics, morality, or like Adam was saying, like something to do with your routine, like health-wise.
That's a good way to say it, Bill. Routine.
Okay. Well, Bill, I appreciate that, because look, my routine is always shifting. And honestly, I've got some solid ethics, but there's no number one rule there. And here's the terrible thing that I got to admit is that, ethics do become situational. There's certain points in my life where I did things that I would not do today. And you know what? I open up the possibility that tomorrow might be a whole other situation, and it's not necessarily about survival at the cost of other people, but you learn certain things. There might have been a point in time where I was around plenty of people that found it absolutely horrendous that somebody would sell drugs. Of course, I kept my life compartmentalized and spent some years selling drugs. But they didn't know that, and they would sit there and talk about how they were absolutely awful people. It's funny, their ethics would be like that until they got hooked on painkillers and wound up having to go find a way to not be dope sick. And maybe they would be like that until they had to go buy medicine illegally because it wasn't available at anywhere near a reasonable price in this country. and all of a sudden their ethics would shift, and mine have shifted plenty of different ways over the course of my lifetime out of necessity. So, ethical rules, I got to say, the only general one that I stick to is, I guess the one my father gave me when I was about 3. I got to think about it real hard though, because it's the only one that I would say I've always abided by. And that is that you never prey upon someone who is defenseless. I know that sounds pretty weird, but
That's a good one, no?
you don't harm someone who can't defend themselves. You don't prey upon weaker, smaller people. You don't ever do anything to harm someone who is not capable of fighting back. And I would say that I've always stuck to that. Always. Yeah. I think that would be the only thing that has absolutely been there all the way through. And I take it a little further too. I later in life I developed the do no harm principle and the non-aggression principle personally for myself, and then I heard other people say it too, where I feel like, my freedom to do whatever the hell it is I like ends right where it infringes upon somebody else's. But it feels like the same ethical concern here. And I generally would say that, the do no harm principle is the thing that I've carried with me the majority of my life. But the key really, because there were certain times when, I was out to do harm, but quite frankly, I was out to do harm and I felt it was very justified. And anybody can imagine a circumstance where that comes up. And maybe it wasn't the most Buddha-like, Christian-like, whatever thing to do, but I mean, it is what it was. But still, I have never, to my mind, sought to deliver aggression, violence, or anything else like that to somebody that I didn't feel could defend themselves. No way.
Yeah, I don't think that's weird at all. And it's great advice from both end of protecting those who can't defend themselves. But on the same side, I've always thought that, how you treat those below you, like how you treat pets and children, shows a true measure of who you are. So if you're going to drop to that level, then, you're not rising to being a greater person. So it's advice in, how not to be an a-hole, but also, how to be that greater person. Because if everybody was that way, if everybody had everybody's back, I mean, we would be the most powerful species around.
Yeah, see, I agree with that. And I'll tell you, the proper context is that my father told me that is the essence of your responsibility for being a man. Is that you follow that principle always. And again, he told this to me when I was 3. So, it has remained with me 46 years now, and I don't feel as though I've ever violated it. I may have made some questionable decisions, and I may have I have done some terrible things in my life. As a juvenile, I served time even. Not as an adult, no adult criminal record. But anyway, and deservedly so when I served time as a juvenile. But once matured, I definitely still retained that, and I think that is like kind of a balance principle and does go with the non-aggression kind of concept where, I really do feel that way. I don't need to enforce my beliefs or anything on anybody. I really wish that our species was mature enough to be anarchistic, but I can never get past the minarchistic concept based on the way other people are. But it's the concept of non-aggression. You know, my ability to swing my fist ends at the tip of your nose. That's the way I see it. Unless you consent to that, you want to join in, we can box, and that is an agreement. You know. But other than that, I would say that's the only hard and fast rule I've ever held my whole life.
I like that. Just to shift gears and to kind of go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is out of left field, I guess. Do you think there's a difference between righteous indignation and wrath? I mean, we talk about not preying on the weak, but what about, the other end of the spectrum? Like,
yeah. Well,
just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and I've got, again, situationally, there is a time, again, I can look at different time periods in my life where, quite frankly, if I didn't embrace some rage and wrath, wouldn't have survived, as I've matured, I would say that there's a huge difference between righteous indignation and wrath. Sure, there is. There's a huge difference, and there's also a huge difference and a disconnect between what you feel, what you're justified to feel and think, and what it is you choose to do. Mm-hmm. Simply because I could be legally justified to shoot someone doesn't mean I should. Again, simply because I could kill an animal because it has, encroached upon my territory doesn't mean I should. Because I can burn something down, even without consequence, doesn't mean I should. No, there is a greater question to that, which is, at what point actually does that account for the damage that you can do? And I think there is no singular answer to that. Is that everything again is very situational. Mm-hmm. If someone were to take the life of someone I cared about, would I feel righteous indignation or wrath and pick up a shotgun and go at them? Well, I might. And would I be right or would I be wrong? I might. And it's a variable situation. I mean, there is a lot of possibilities there, and I think there's way too much nuance to answer that question again with a single thing. But again, I think at all times the consideration is even if you have a right to your wrath, mm-hmm. right? Does that mean that in truth you should exercise that right?
Well, maybe the question is, are you capable if needed? Because if a wolf comes into your house, if you need to protect you and your family, then you got to do what you got to do. That's the situation. That's the answer. It can be very black and white. And, when you make that decision, are you like, that's the kind of thing about society and demasculating that gets me. It's like, there is a time for anger and rage. If that wolf is in your house, it is needed and it needs to be executed in such a way to resolve the situation. So,
see, that to me provides a new third option, which is, I have been able to do what some people would consider to be very violent things. And it wasn't rage, it wasn't wrath, it was just what had to be done. And there's your third option. No rage, no wrath. It's just what had to be done. And I don't lose sleep over any of that at all and wouldn't. Mm-hmm. A wolf or a man coming to do me harm, same thing. They decided their fate. I didn't. It's not going to bother me. And it hasn't. I've done a few horrendous things. Don't want to go into details, but I've had to do a few horrendous things in order to defend myself or someone else. And nope, I wind up really. It's not rage. It's not wrath. It's just that's just what had to get done. I don't know how to categorize that.
Yeah, if you're getting stung by ants, you're going to swat them away. I mean, life has simple answers sometimes that don't need justification.
Sometimes.
What are you going to say there, Bill?
I was gonna just mention that it kind of reminds me of an interview I recently watched of a World War I soldier, and he was saying about how kind of saying the same sentiment as how how do you feel about taking the life of another or human being, and the guy was like, well, it's just war. It's like you, it's not good or bad. It's just you're there, and the weird example he gave was that they had stopped. They had both each side had stopped or had agreed to stop shelling like the supply trains and lines coming in to resupply the troops in the trench, because well, if they can't get the supplies there, then the troops can't get up and run at each other and continue to fire their guns. So they agreed to stop doing that so they could kill each other in another fashion. But so it was just like that whole paradox of it's not one way or another. It's not good or bad. It just is, right?
Sometimes things just are, and it's not a matter of how you feel about it, how you think about it. It's just what's got to get done. And I would say that kind of thing happens in darker times in your life, but it doesn't mean that again, it's not the. I mean, look, I got into a situation where I probably could have done some serious time as a kid. I mean, real time, like, I'd be getting out now kind of thing. And I'm 49. And the fact is, it didn't bother me a bit. And it turned out that the legal system agreed with me at the time, that I really wasn't given choices. But I wasn't upset about it. I wasn't bothered by it. It just had to be what it was. And you get yourself into a situation where, look, this can go either way too. And I don't even think I would have been upset if I was on the receiving end of that. If the situation was reversed, it just is what it is in certain situations. And unfortunately, when you're in a circumstance that, well, there isn't a way to avoid it. I mean, I like to avoid things like that now if I can. I don't spoil for them at all, but if it comes, like if somebody were to break in my house right now and come in with a weapon, I mean, he's getting carried out of here. He's leaving feet first. And if not, I am. And either way, I guess that's just the roll of the dice that day. But I'm not going to feel bad about it because I didn't arrange this circumstance in the first place. If I'm responsible for leading somebody into something, I mean, that's a different story. But I mean, honestly, if you're just there and you're kind of, caught up in the, whether it's a war or it's just being in a bad neighborhood at a bad time, things happen,
Yeah. It's as humans or as society, I feel like we like to put labels on things, and there's some situations where you really can't, and it's just I don't know. It's for listeners out there. Maybe it could be a reminder that not everything is black and white, right?
Well, it never is, right? There's always more to the story. There's always more to the story, but sometimes it is the luck of the draw, the way certain things go. And, you want to argue with that. Okay. Learn how to shuffle your cards, so that you cheat every time, maybe, but life doesn't let you do that,
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most and why?
I've had a lot of best friends over the years. And it's funny, they come and they go. And I was trying to think when I read this question in the first place, I was trying to think what would be the thing they would all agree on. I'm such a weird work in progress. I don't know. I do not know what that would be. And I don't currently have a best friend to talk to ask him. You know, um, I went through some pretty interesting changes lately too, which really altered my perspective on things like self improvement and what it is that can be done. And the possibilities are limited. There's probably not one thing I need to work on. There's probably 100. One of them is sometimes I talk too much, as you guys are learning. But you know, if you're hanging out with me face to face, though, um, I'm not quite as boisterous or as verbal as I am when I do a radio show or when I do something like this. So universally, I couldn't even combine all their answers at different points in my life. There are different things. Um, you know, and the different critiques, by the way, I think in some cases change due to the age. Earlier on, there might have been people that said I get, well, you know what? Now that I'm rolling it around in my brain, now I've actually come up with something. I become too highly focused on my occupation sometimes. Whatever it is that I'm either doing for a living or for not so much of a living like I do now. Um, I probably get too intensely concerned about that, and I need to learn to put aside my work when I'm not working. Maybe that's the only thing that I can think of universally that has come up more than once, but all of them would not agree. I mean, I had best friends that didn't make it out of childhood when I was in childhood. I had best friends, in my 20s that you know you change interests and things change and they drift away, and best man at the wedding, but a couple years later maybe not so much the best man anymore, stuff like that. In my 30s I didn't have very many friends again until later after I got divorced. Then I had friends again. um and and actually in the past few years I found it very hard to maintain um, like personal friendships that are consistent, um, partially due to my slightly unorthodox views on everything from politics to I don't give a damn about sports to I mean I like the concept of baseball and boxing, but I'm not an avid follower. I don't have common interests with most men I encounter. I moved down south, and now I'm a communist heathen for some reason. And since I don't support Trump, that disqualifies me from a lot of people I live around here in Georgia. Just, I don't know. I would say the only thing is that obsessive sort of thing to my passion at the time, whether I was being a musician, doing this radio show, working my ass off for ExxonMobil, learning how to work in security. I did a lot of jobs. And generally speaking, when it is the thing that is eating up a lot of the hours of my day, it seems to carry on even when I'm not doing it. So, yeah, come to think of it, that would be it.
It's a great answer. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like a lot of people will let their jobs like define who they are, not actually like their actual being. A job is what you do. It's not who you are, right?
Yeah. You see, but I had to think about that because it's not really, I don't see it that way.
Okay.
But I had to think about what is it that they complained about. And yeah, that would be the most consistent complaint. And again, it changed. You are you never talk about anything but your music stuff, man. When I was a musician. So I get to that point where I'm married and I'm working. Well, I wish it was a 9-to-5 job, but I was in different positions, working for ExxonMobil, and and there I was constantly occupied with that, and that's when I first got a cell phone, so they were ringing my phone all the time, and I felt like I was just on call all the time, so my head never really totally got out of my work. But then again, I was also in a miserable marriage, so where else was my head going to go? It's kind of weird because I'm thinking about it, and from my perspective, I'm just dedicated to what I do. that's not overly obsessed or not ever putting it down. And really, frankly, I mean, it's only recently that I made an effort to change it. But at all times when people presented that to me, I never thought to myself that I should, because it always seemed like what it was I had to do.
Well, there's got to be a balance there too, because there's some people that don't put enough into that, and that's not good. That's no good either.
Well, and that's the other thing is it might be partially born of the fact that I'm, again, I don't like to put my disability up front, but again, I've got about like say 10% of the vision of an average person. So once that's known, whether you're doing a job or you're working with people on projects or whatever else, they make it into an issue. And I think my overzealous behavior there is partially based on, no, you're not going to think of me as the guy who does this despite of the fact that he's got this disability, but I will do exactly as much or better than somebody who is fully sighted. And that's probably the reason for it, really. And on all fronts, even today, where look, I produce my own radio show, and some people are amazed that I can pull that off because they know very well I've got to use a larger screen and all kinds of stuff, and anybody who actually knows what my condition is kind of amazed that I read as much as I did or studied as much as I did or whatever else, but that extra effort was there in order to overcompensate for the fact that I never wanted to be judged by it. Where it's like, oh, well, he can only do this much because. No, we're not hearing that. My mind is fine and I'm breathing. So not only am I just as good as you, but what's your excuse for not catching me? Is where I'm at. So yeah, I guess that's probably way too much explanation. Sorry about that.
No, that's awesome. I think that I keep forgetting that you see differently, and so that didn't even enter into my thought when I was replying back to that. But just go back to the question. Like, I don't think that's something that you need to work on. I think that's admirable to have.
Unless it starts negatively impacting your life, and then find the balance.
Yeah, and I feel as though I've done that, but again, to me, there's no problem. But you were asking what would your best friend's point of view, so I had to stitch them together there and think.
Right.
Listen, the truth's always in the middle, right? So,
yeah, their point of view, my point of view, and then the actual view.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got you.
And everything in moderation, including moderation.
There you go.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Okay, well, I love all kinds of music, and I love soulful music. It's very inspirational, moving to me. I love it. And my taste in music might be a little odd, but to me, music is a universal language, and complex. I mean, I've studied different things about tones and beats and the influence on the mind and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like actually a well-written piece of music, and unfortunately we live in a digital age where a lot of nuance is lost in digital translation. Music is just a great thing. So I would say that that's probably the most turn on kind of thing that I can think of. I mean, without going into other specifics, because you use the phrase turn on and you might think, well, we could go into another direction here, but no, I think that all of this stuff can be contained within great pieces of music, great lyrical writing, presentation, obviously, but I mean, yeah, great sound, great, well-constructed music is creatively stimulating to me.
Do you think that music is something that man created or that we discovered?
Well, I would say both. If you listen to anything that has an active ecosystem. To me, I can hear music at a quiet pond. I can hear music in the movements in a city. So it just happens. It's not necessarily created or invented. And then there are geniuses that figure out how to arrange those sounds. And I don't consider myself to be any sort of genius ever. Even when I was making a living as a musician, I was not great. But I recognize greatness, and there are some very cool things that happen when people decide to create. So I would say the answer is both, is that it is simultaneously something that exists, but it is also something that is created and therefore feeds back into its own existence and is created again. I think that it's a circular spiritual and psychosocial reality.
Fair enough. I like it.
Yep, we're on to question 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
Embarrassing or humbling experience of my life. I would have to say the first time that I was locked in a cell, and it was a fairly not like a holding cell at a police station, because you're getting out of there pretty soon, unless it happens in New York, in which case you don't know. But generally, I think that when I actually was first put into a cell in a juvenile detention center, and I got to hear those locks tumble, and that was that. I'm in a box. That was one of the first ones that was most humbling. Literally getting, some years later, literally getting knocked out by somebody who just decided they were going to pick a fight with me when I was drunk in a bar. And I never even got to raise my hands. This guy sucker punched me. That was a fairly humbling experience. There's been a lot of things that have caused me to consider that at any point in time, no matter how good it is I feel, or what it is I feel I've got, or where I think I am, that I can always end up face down somewhere, with no choices and no options. So there's probably too many to mention. I would say that one of the earliest ones was that. Getting locked up and realizing that you ain't going nowhere. And now people are going to tell you when you can do whatever it is you can do. They're going to tell you when to eat, and they're going to tell you when you're allowed to have your light off, and they're going to tell you everything. That's fairly humbling. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, though. You don't need that humility. I wouldn't recommend getting knocked out. I wouldn't recommend a lot of things I wouldn't recommend necessarily, but humbling experiences to me are usually a great thing. An embarrassment, I don't know, little tough to embarrass me, actually. Always has been. So I don't have embarrassment, but humble, yeah, getting humbled and getting the understanding that at all times everyone and everything can abandon you, and I don't go along with those people that feel like, oh well, I know God never abandoned. Nah, you can get a sense that you're no longer in the sight of the gods. You can get a sense that you are truly alone. You can get a sense that you are truly helpless, and that will humble you. And if you haven't been there, then good for you. And I'm glad, and I hope you never get there. But if you do get there, learn, and stand the hell back up. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, when I went through the questions and gave answers, my story was also had to do with inside of a justice facility. So listeners can go back and catch that if they want to. But so I know that feeling you're talking about, and I don't advise it either.
Well, you know what it is. It is a realization. Even if you've gone through court, you've been cuffed, and and the cops beat you up, and whatever else, and you've been to the temporary holding, or you've been to the county for a minute. No, when you're actually and you're in a box, especially in a facility like Jamesburg, which is a fairly well-known facility in New Jersey. I would equate it to a dungeon. Yeah, you hit something that I don't even think you can articulate. But if you've been there, perhaps there is a poet who has written about it. But I have not seen anything that actually describes all of what I went through. Understanding that that's that. And you don't change things. That could be that for as long as you breathe. Yeah.
Not a good
Yeah.
situation, but you can hold on to that feeling, and that's a pretty good I don't know how to put it, but it gives you that perspective always. You know where you're at, you know how good you have it, and you
It's a good
know you don't
motivator.
want to be back in that situation.
Yeah. Exactly.
True story.
What is your greatest fear, and how did you overcome it if you have?
Fear. Yeah, tough question. I have a minor fear of heights, where I'm not comfortable being in an like say being on a roof, even though I've had to do it. When you're more than a story up, for sure, it's way less comfortable. um, but outside of that, I don't know. You know, fears are just things that you wind up breaking at some point. Either that, or you live very secluded. So I don't know. Just fear is not generally part of my equation. It's tough. It's a tough thing to even answer. To me, fear is one of the most counterproductive things possible. It's not like I never ever feel it at all, but I would much. You have to get rid of it quick. You got to deal with it fast. So anytime I've encountered it, and that's not reasonable avoidance of things. Like, I'm not going to go walking blindfolded across the street, although I have been taught to do that. I wouldn't recommend it, and I'm not going to actively look to go do that, and I'm not going to like say dangle one of my children off a balcony, because I'll avoid things that have greater risk. But it's mainly risk assessment. Anything, I'm not afraid of stuff. Um, and I don't know. Some people are very much dictated to by it. I can't. I can almost not wrap my mind around the fact that people are simply afraid of stuff, so they give in, or they change their direction based on fear that is not reasonable. And it's not a tough guy answer either. It's not like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything. It's like, you know what, you might be afraid of fire, but you get burned a little. You understand there's a way to deal with it. You might be afraid of guns because you're not accustomed to being around them, but you get accustomed to be around them. They're nothing. You might be afraid of the lunatic screaming on the street corner, but quite honestly, I'm not. I just I don't know where to go with it, because it's one of these things that's so small to me. And actively, I mean, I guess every once in a while something comes up where you worry a little about where things are going, but I can't call that fear. You worry about it, and then quite frankly, you do something about it. And the more you actively engage, the less it is a factor anyway. And I hate to bring this back to my handicap again, but honestly, there's certain things that I think have forced me to disregard what would be fear. Um, you know, Even when I was a musician, I used to stage dive, and you know, a lot of people didn't know this, but when they use strobe lights in the clubs, that would temporarily blind me completely. I still dove off that stage. I didn't even know what was there. Didn't care. I embraced it. Let's go into the unknown. I temporarily lost my sight. Didn't make me immobile. Um, I've had various issues where I couldn't see stuff. Now, at the same time, I don't drive a vehicle because I know I have no depth perception. It's a bad idea, but I'm not afraid to do it. I have driven a vehicle, but it's only in the most necessary circumstances, right? I don't like firing a gun at a living thing, but I've done it, and I'm not afraid to do it. I've had shots fired at me, and I'm not going to stand there and let somebody fire at me. But generally it's duck and run and do what you got to do. But that's a reasonable fear. There are projectiles coming that could do serious damage. You know, I try to avoid fights because I would prefer peace, not because I'm afraid of people. Um, I don't know. Thinking through it, I don't know what it is I'm actually afraid of. So fear is a difficult thing outside of heights. Again, heights.
Right. Yeah.
And needles. I do not like being stuck with a needle. So I'm one of these guys, and that's not why I have a position on vaccines. Although maybe it's got something to do with it. And yes, I have tattoos, which is usually the follow-up question to that, but that's not a stick pin. I don't like being stuck with a syringe and a pin. Just that simple. Anyways, but outside of that, and I have a reasonable position for why it is I'm afraid of needles. Heights, that's an unreasonable fear, and I don't know where it comes from. It's just one of those things.
It seems to be really common. The heights is an answer that comes up a lot. Needles, I think, it's the first time I've heard, but it makes sense. I mean, I agree with you there. But I mean, it sounds like you don't let fear prevent you from taking action. So yeah, I like the answer.
It's just the thing. It doesn't like. It's like, what is your greatest fear? When you have a greatest fear, you've been holding on to it, and not engaging with it. And to me, it's like, no. See, you're afraid of that? Do it. You're afraid of being here? Go. That's my mentality. I don't know if it's healthy, but it is. It is what it is. Again, it is what it is.
Right.
What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
Single greatest driving force in life. Yeah. Okay. I guess I would. Again, it's hard to say. You guys ask some weird questions here to me. And I like it. I like it because it's making me think a lot more than what most people ask about anything usually. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm enjoying your perspective on these questions a lot. So yeah, don't apologize.
Okay. No, I just feel like I'm like over answering and kind of twisting some of what you're asking because I should have a standard easy answer for a lot of this stuff. But the truth is that to me, you know what? Most things are not a simple, again, there's black and there's white and then there's the rest of the world. And, I'm sadly, I guess I'm not black or white. And that's the thing. So, single driving force. I can bear it down to just about this, and I would say it goes across the board. And I talked about these different time periods before, where each of these answers, if you ask me this in a different part of my life, you might get a different answer. But I'm trying to give you the best universal answers, right? Um, so that driving force is just to before I'm done on this earth, just to leave it a little better one way or another than it was when I got here, for my part. I know that sounds like a really I think so much of myself, but I'm talking about just even the smallest improvement. Currently I would say it's about creating a large library of audio presentations that inform and cause people to think about the world around them and give them the ability to change their world. But me personally, I just want to leave things off better than they were when I got here. And at the same time, make sure that my children will do the same somehow. But I'm not really in control of that, so it's not the driving force of my life. Yeah, that's it. I just want to leave things better than the way I found them. Um, Overall.
Who were and or are your role models and why?
Okay. So now we go back into the compartmentalized life. You know, Up until the age of, I don't know, somewhere in my 20s, maybe almost till I was 30, there were musicians, and I already described them. Lemmy Kilmister and Ozzy Osbourne, not because they were the most talented guys, but because they created something that I appreciated, identified with, and they were just overall to me they were excellent as performers. Now, vocal talents you can argue about and all that stuff, and Lemmy was a much greater songwriter than a lot of people realize. But then it changed, right? Who were my role models later? Um, you know, a role model. I don't know if I ever really had a role model. Even then, I would say that they were the guys that weren't role models. And even when I look at, the history of stuff when it comes to my appreciation for talk radio, which I've had my whole life too. It wasn't about role models. I never sought a role model of any kind. I know that I'm going to do things different. And the people that I had some admiration for, I want to be their peer. It's not about role model and aspiring to them. It's just, no, I assert myself as I want to be their peer. So when I was admiring and appreciating musicians, it's because I wanted to be on par with them. I wanted to get to that level. It was about bringing myself up to that level. So a particular role model never applied, but I've sought to bring myself into peer groups. Nowadays it's a broadcaster, it's a independent media person. And I've got people that I admire in that way as well, like James Corbett and Jack Blood's not doing it anymore, but I really appreciated what he used to do. And bunch of people that I admire.
So it seems like instead of a role model, you admire the craft.
Yeah, and then I seek to be a craftsman.
Mm-hmm.
If I admire it enough, then I want to do it.
Yeah, so, you're being an apprentice.
Person.
Yeah, being an apprentice, the person who's teaching you isn't your role model per se, and you can have many of those. So yeah, that seems like a very beneficial way to go about things, because then you're not locked into a person's successes and their mistakes. You're locked into systems and figuring out what works.
Right. I mean, look, people would find it odd, like as a talk radio person, right? I could put together a group of people for you that in one way or another, I wanted to be a peer of theirs. And that's a weird group. I mean, you could start with the fact that I listened to Howard Stern as a kid, a lot. But I also listened to the weird guys that were on the radio late at night, and most of whom I don't know their names. There was a sports talk guy named Steve Summers, and I thought he was great. There's your Long John Neville's, there's your Art Bells, there's taking a shortwave radio and listening to Cooper there. All these guys, I said to myself, I think I can do this and I want to do this. And it's funny because I didn't do it until deeper into my life than probably I should have. But I was busy doing other stuff, you know. It's just at a certain point, I mean, I was encouraged by some others to do it. And when it was people that I thought were, good at what they were doing, encouraging me to do it, I definitely, I appreciated that and went with it. But that's kind of how that has always developed for me, where it's like, I appreciate something, I study it a bit, and I reach out to the personalities, and somebody encourages me, and lo and behold, I go to seek to be their peer, one way or another. So I don't feel it's fair to say I had a role model at any point, really, except maybe early on as a musician. And again, when you're starting with a 12-year-old mentality, sure enough, I wanted to get myself immersed in that whole fictional world of, being a rock star. But I was 12, I was also writing letters to President Reagan and getting myself put on watch lists because I was talking to him about nuclear war because I thought I had an interesting answer that maybe we don't need this crap. Maybe stop making the weapons. And ever after, it's part of my FBI file now. And that was from 1984, and I was 12. Anyways, it's that is I seek to do something when I see that there needs to be something done, and also there are admirable people doing it. So I guess I'm kind of the weirdest follower possible. But at the same time, an individual role model where it's down to the one person, the one personality, I can't do it. It doesn't work. Nobody's perfect. And even when I was listening to Howard Stern, right? I liked when they read the news. I liked some of the, interesting interplay, and the fact that I was getting to hear an elitist jerk, basically talk down to people, and they would come back for more. I found that really fascinating. I wasn't all that interested in the, the lesbians and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And, oh, the girl's getting naked, and I don't really care. I like the fact that he asked weird questions of people. I like that you got a sense of things out of some of his interviews. And also that he could be abusive to his audience and they would continue to come back. Now, I don't do any of that. But I found it fascinating. So, it was like that was as fascinating as Art Bell when he was, talking to the guy who said he traveled from the future in a truck. That was as interesting as, people arguing and screaming at each other after 9/11 that there were Arabs everywhere in strange towns in New Jersey. Talk radio is an interesting landscape, and seeking to be, part of the independent, not necessarily the alternative. I mean, obviously that's where I was going to go, but and I even liked listening to some of the crazy religious preachers that I could tune into on shortwave radio in the middle of the night, who would talk about how Satan is everywhere, and and send money to my ministry here in Alabama or wherever they actually were, on the shortwave radio stuff, and talking about snakes and the snake handler guys that would talk about, if the snake bites me, then the Lord will protect me, and all this kind of stuff. I find it all very interesting. So I wanted to be part of that in my way. And that's what I've done with everything. So a singular role model, impossible.
Love it. What quality do you most admire in a woman?
Ew. See, again with the question. All right, what now? Now, I bet you some people go in the physical direction, and some people purposely make sure to avoid the physical direction. Um, you know, I can tell you that there's one thing I can't put up with in a woman, so I guess it has to be the quality that I need. Absolutely, I cannot stand stupid. It drives me crazy. They cannot be dumb, and especially not the dumb sort of playing dumb so that other people will do stuff. I can't stand that. Have to have some intelligence. That is a primary. I can't hang long otherwise. um but I mean, to boil it down to a singular quality, like what is the thing I like the most? I mean, look, physical attributes, I can't even boil that down to one thing. Man, I'm a mess. You know that? I just, you know what it is? I can't boil stuff down to the singular. I don't believe in the singular.
You like too many things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I could tell you that femininity is important. I can tell you that I certainly love pretty eyes. Who doesn't? Femininity might be a scale for some people that is a matter of perspective. I like a woman who's clearly feminine. I like one that's intelligent. I like one that's definitely got her vulnerable qualities to her, as well as the strength to to do on their own. you know Physical qualities, I'm not so thrilled with the skinny women, but I don't know, man. Again, it's so weird. I mean, if you take a look at who I married, right? My first wife was 6'3" and she was heavy. So if she didn't weigh 300 pounds, she didn't weigh nothing. Okay. My second wife, 5'4", weighed 95 pounds, soaking wet. Um, totally different physical shapes. I can find something good in just about all of it, usually. But I can't stand dumb. I cannot stand just woefully and intentionally ignorant. Um, that I can't partner with it anyway. I mean, they're fully within their right to exist in the world. But not mine. I can't be around women that are like that. It drives me crazy. you know. So I would say intelligence would have to be the key. Gotta have that, otherwise the rest of it is irrelevant. If you're dumb, and I mean, I've even been with a dumb woman who had a great heart, meant well, average appearance, had a lot of qualities I liked, but she was just so insufferable with just ignorance and stupidity that I could not make that relationship work, and I never can. When and it's not like they got to be super genius. It's just a matter of there's just woefully stupid. I don't have time for it.
No, I second that. Like, it's a
Yeah.
blunt answer, and I like it. So I agree.
Okay. I felt like I had to qualify it a little bit because it's like I feel bad. Don't be stupid, But
Well, what you're trying to say, I
honest-
think, is that there's this spectrum of what you absolutely love, and the antithesis of that other end is things that grate you, so you swing heavily towards the other side.
yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing is that again, frankly, I would say, I mean, and my second wife, bless her, both of my first two spouses are dead now, but um, you know, she was beautiful and all, but I got to be honest with you. Generally speaking, I wouldn't be around somebody that was that thin. I kind of I veer away from it, but it's not as though it's an impossible thing to work out. But that stupidity, I can't get past it. It's just, and it sounds mean, I think, but there are just some people that go through life clueless, and I don't know how they survive. But they do, and I can't be around them. I just it hurts my head to be around them. And they're doing fine usually. They're happy and they do their thing, but I can't do it. So honestly, there has to be some intelligence and some warmth. Otherwise, I mean, I can't. It doesn't. I don't care what the rest of the body or the rest of the personality's like, or sweetest woman in the world. If she's dumb, I can't do it. So there you go.
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Hmm. Well, I don't know. Courageous things that I've seen. I have seen and I've also done. So I guess I've done these things too, but I don't know if they're courageous. Where you do put yourself in harm's way in order to protect someone else. And I've turned around. I've helped people out of cars that have been flipped over, and not too long ago, somebody's house burned down, and one of the guys that was pulled out, myself and Mrs. O, we kept the guy stable and tried to minimize the shock he was going into from his burns until the ambulance came. That was a couple of months ago. Um, you know, I've stood up for people when they were being preyed upon. I've done that. I don't know if any of that stuff is about courage or just, I don't know if it is courage. Um, the most courageous things you ever see are generally because somebody was put into a corner and they acted in a situation where they felt as though they had no choice. Um, and so I don't know if I've ever done anything really courageous, although some people might say different. I don't measure courage, because again, it's not always courage that gets people to do really extraordinary things. Sometimes extraordinary things come out of necessity, and I don't think it takes courage when it's necessary. So tough thing there. I don't even know how to measure courage, honestly.
No, and I like that because to me, it's the most fascinating part about this question is, what people perceive as courage on other people versus in the same situation is almost always completely different. The hero never thinks of themselves as a hero. So it's.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
So I don't know. I like your situation that, I'm here. This is what's going on. And this is just what needs to get done. So I'm going to do it. I've weighed the consequences and the gains, and we've pulled the trigger. So let's go.
Well, right. Like, look, in the same vein, about that situation with that fire, right? That guy lived. I didn't even think he was going to live. And but there was a dog in the house, didn't make it. There's no way that based on the situation, it would have been foolish to try and pull that dog out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the dog was even still alive by the time, I got there. So I don't think I had a choice there either. But the calculation was the dog in there. And I don't know what the decision would have been had it been barking or something like that. Maybe me or somebody else might have gone in there. And I wasn't even the guy who pulled him out. The guys that pulled him out were just people that saw the fire, saw the situation, and went and got him. But again, this sometimes things that look courageous are just a matter of, what? It would have been horrendous if I didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
You step in between people sometimes when somebody is getting hurt, because there's a fight going on. Yeah, that might be stupid to some people. It might be courageous to somebody else. It's so hard to mention. Not mention. It's so hard to measure what that really means because, is that courageous? Is it courageous to have done? I've done some things where, frankly, it's like I've had people go, "I'm surprised you lived through that." and as am I. But at the time, it just seemed like it was worth the risk and needed to be done. But I don't know. I've never felt like a courageous person. I've had other people say that they felt as though I had some courage. But I don't feel like that. I mean, even when I say things that are somewhat controversial and people tell me, you're going to get in trouble and people are going to track you for that and people are going to do that. You know what? What the hell? What are they going to do to me? Kill me? That's going to happen eventually anyway. The world, one way or another, is going to snuff me out. So, tomorrow, today, 10 years from now, difference is not much. It is what it is. It doesn't mean that I'm actively looking to die, but I don't have that fear either of death. It's like, but that's not courage. That's just, listen, it is what it is. Again, back to, it sounds like you're going to need to title this one, It Is What It Is, because I keep saying it. I mean, it is what it is. One of these days, each one of us, all three of us, all of us are going to be gone. So, you want to be afraid about the sun coming up tomorrow? I don't. I'm not wasting my energy on it. And, but then again, I also don't, I think you have to be able to reckon with what is courage in the first place. And again, you know what? It probably varies perspective. I mean, some people would see certain things, like I said, that you might have done or I might have done to help somebody. And maybe it did put us out. Maybe it did harm us a little, but it was better than letting them die, or it was better than letting them suffer. So you made a calculated decision. Is that courage, or is that just what's right? To me, I don't know. Most things seem to fall under, this is what's right. It's not courage. It's just what it is. So courage, I don't know. I don't have a great yardstick for it.
Fair enough. I like the approach to the question again. Yeah.
And Chuck, the last question. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Yeah.
And it could also be read as, what does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Yeah. Yeah. And I hate to do this to you guys again, but in today's world, how is that even relevant, right? Because people want to complain about the definitions that other people place upon you. What is it to be a man? Well, if some people will tell you today, if you simply decide you're a man, you're a man. Okay. I once heard when I was a kid, and not from somebody that would even count in my collective role model bin, that quite frankly, a man wasn't a man until he laid with a woman, had his first drink, and took life, one way or another. I don't agree with that definition. I don't agree with you have a sudden, imagining that you are a male regardless of what your physical being is. I don't agree with any of it. Defining manhood in general is a tough thing that we will not be able to answer here in a paragraph or even a book. There's a lot to it. And so I'm going to use my own definition, and to hell with today's world, and tell you that, frankly, based on a lack of proper male role models, I don't know, but I'm going to live my life and have lived my life in a quest to make sure that that I get to that each and every day. You first have to know how to be a person in general. You first have to know how to be in this human form, whether you're a spiritual being having a human experience, or you are a particular energy that has manifested itself this way, or this is the way God created you, or this is the way the universe wanted you. You know what? All of it has nothing to do with your actions, which is what is going to define you anyway. First, you got to be part of the human family one way or another, whether you like it or not. And then, second, there are certain things that men will find themselves naturally better at. It's just a reality. There is a difference between the masculine and the feminine, and your role, in my mind, again, now here's where we go. Well, that doesn't work for gay men, and I know, but I got to go with my own definition. I'm not gay. I'm not questioning what my gender is. So far as I can tell, I'm meant to be here and to be the flexible and strong part of whatever it is I can be a part of. And I'm here to protect my children. I'm here to protect my partner, and my partner is here to protect me as well. But those roles of protection vary. We're here to take care of each other. There are certain things that men are simply better at. And you know what? I'm not even good at all of them. So I don't know what to say except, again, that we need to be doing our part of being part of the human family. Gender is a real thing. It is not down to 27 parts in my mind. There are men, there are women, and frankly, there may be others, but they're rare. And this is all, again, my opinion. And you know what? We learn at different parts of our lives that being the man in the situation changes. It does, but it has a defined role, and there is a role there, and your situation will vary. But to be the guy who has to focus on his usually superior upper body strength, who thinks in a certain way when it comes to mathematical equations. Okay, being the guy who has to figure out often what works mechanically. Not to say that women can't be mechanically inclined or know math or blah 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 blah, but typically speaking, this is your role. This is the thing that you need to impart, and you need to be able to embrace first your humanity. And then I think the masculine role is fairly classical, but also flexible. We're all different. No two men are alike, although we have some things in common. No two women are exactly alike, although they have some things in common. So there's common ground, and all you got to do is look around you and see who it is that's actually, doing their job, taking care of their people, their stuff, and not attempting to encroach upon you. Those people, those are generally the men. Women do it too, but they have a role that complements that. So it's a wide open question. And you know what? At the end of the day, I couldn't even write a full-on definition of it because there's always new information, new situations that emerge. And you got to learn on the job. There's no book that says you have a penis. Here is your instruction manual for your life. Doesn't work that way. So learn, try and maintain strength, try and share your strength with others. This is your role as a man in the world, the way I see it.
Yeah, I like that you brought up that in order to answer the question first is that somebody must realize that they're a part of the human condition, and that's the first step. And then within that condition, there are certain roles that can be filled, and some of those roles, like you said, are more men have more proclivity to, and there's others that women have more proclivity to, right? So I like the way that you broke it down there.
And I'm sorry, that's what I do with everything. So you got lots of long answers that you probably are like,
yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I love it. Do you have time for a couple bonus questions by chance? Adam, do you have any other thoughts first?
No, and Bill, do you have the bonus questions in front of you?
Yeah,
If you wanna pick out a few, and feel free to read or drop them in chat, whatever your preference.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's let Bill pick a. I'll leave it to chance with Bill. Right? Whatever it is that you think would be good to add to this, you'll see it, you'll know it. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I've got one right here. It's actually a newer question that was submitted to us from a past guest, and that is, if you could give one sentence of advice to the future generations, what would it be?
Okay, one sentence of advice. If you find that there is something worthy of accomplishing, surrender is not an option.
So surrender in the sense of always striving towards that end, as opposed to surrender in the sense of like letting go and let God.
Yeah, right. Well, look, if you find it worthy of accomplishing, remember the first part, right? So you think that something needs to get done? Don't give up on it. Even if it seems insurmountable, don't surrender. Surrender is not an option if it's worthy of doing. And you got to keep that in mind as you go forward, because not everything's just gonna, I had a great idea and it got done. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, always don't surrender.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of doing podcasts or radio shows. I mean, it's something that you and I and Adam, all three of us here, find value in doing, and we haven't stopped doing it. So I like it.
Right. And then believe me, I had tell you a really quick story. My one uncle who shares, well, I have more than one uncle, but my uncle who shares my last name came across me on the internet when I first started doing the show, and it actually got distributed. And the guy hadn't talked to me in, I don't know, 20 years. Made it a point to get in contact with me to tell me that since he had been somebody who worked for, agencies like Reuters and all this kind of stuff, that that it was a waste of time what I was doing. And that I really should not do that. And I was like, well, that's great that you popped in after 20 years to tell me that. Thanks. But like stuff like that, what that did is it just said, oh, you told me I can't do it. Good. Okay. That means I'm going to do this.
More logs for the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just gave me a little more juice to keep going. I think about that sometimes when stuff has gotten tough and, personal things got in the way or whatever. And you know what? It's like all those people that told you suck, you can't do this, and you started too late in life, and what are you doing with this anti-government stuff and blah blah blah, blah. You know what? Thank you, because you're just telling me that I'm going to just work harder to prove you wrong. I don't know. I guess that's again back to that whole what is your motivating principle, or whatever that question was, your driving force, right? Yeah, tell me I can't do it. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Don't push the button.
Anyway, yeah. So that's what I would say is if something is worthy of accomplishing, then don't give up. Just keep going, regardless of what happens. Keep going.
And I'll just take a second here to remind the listener to, if you haven't already, support your favorite content producers in any way that you can. Time, talent, treasure. One of those three. So, and the last bonus question, and I'm really kind of curious what this would be. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern human life would you change given the chance?
Again, there's a lot of them, isn't there? I'm going to go real philosophical on this.
All right.
I wish I could kick one brick out of the house that is the human condition. One brick out of the modern and the ancient world. There's one brick I'd love to kick out of it, and that is the continuous and seemingly endless ways with which people seek their own success from the domination of others. That seeking dominion over others, seeking control over others, seeking power over others. I wish I could remove that. This desire to dominate one another. I wish I could remove it, because you see, you take that away, and you don't need the prison industrial complex. You take that away, you don't need the military industrial complex. You take that away, you don't need, I mean, how many other places I got to go? You don't need a government. How about that? You don't need policy enforcers, otherwise known as police. You don't need too many judges, because how many disputes are going to happen unless it's motivated by individuals attempting to dominate one another one way or another? Okay. And gee, people that end up with hundreds of billions of dollars, you don't need them either. You don't need that sort of aggregation and collection of, people want to focus on the collection of wealth, but it's really about the paradigm of scarcity. That is not necessary. None of it is, unless there are people all along the chain looking to dominate one another. So that's the one thing I wish I could change. It would revolutionize everything. You'd see no need for a whole bunch of things.
Do you think that we're
Go
like
ahead.
fighting our way through evolution on that, and that we're slowly getting better, and we're pulling ourselves from that dominance into a more docile species?
No, because it, to me, I actually respect it more in its earlier evolutionary stages. Instead of starving people to death by purchasing the resources out from others, and by cornering the markets and putting people's businesses out and all this kind of stuff. Instead of doing that, what they used to do is just come along and, slice you up and take your land away and take away whatever it is you grew. And to me, that was a little more direct than this surrogate, just landscape of ways that you can kill plenty of people with your business decisions and never have to look at a single body. Politicians making decisions, sending soldiers into war, never having to do it themselves, or if they did, they were in a comfy position and not sitting there trying to figure out whether they got to shoot a kid that might have explosives wired to their back. There is all kinds of ugliness that emerges from this, and I think all we've done really is figured out a way to mechanize it. And just like the internet could be a wonderful tool for connection and information, but it's also a terrible thing when it comes to propaganda and crowd control. And like I say, you just perfect it. You perfect the system. If you own the system that says, you should be fighting to get yourself to half of the wage, that would make sense based on the monetary paradigm, a lot of damage is going to be done in that wake. If you take away people's desire to dominate one another, whether it's physical or it's psychological or it's financial or any of this other stuff, if this could be kicked out of the human condition, I feel like virtually everything else would simply evaporate. And the evolution, awfully slow from my standpoint. But then again, I've only been alive just under half a century, and I don't think it's improved. I think it's mechanized. It's been perfected by some. Of course, the chosen few that are the moneyed class have gotten a jump on it. But no matter what, it seems like We never fail to invent new ways to assert domination for those that have the ability to grab hold of the right resources. So I think this needs to go. And it's not going fast enough with the evolution. I don't think we're becoming docile at all. But then again, I'm American. So, could be that there's a bit more violence just built into the situation. Not sure about that. Could be there's a bit more stupidity built into the situation. Not sure about that either. But I don't know. Your observations may vary.
Well said.
Yeah, good answer. The tricky part is the how. The how. We've identified the what we would change. It's the how, because that's so ingrained in our psyche, right?
I have no idea. I literally, I have zero concept, because anytime you approach this, even with somebody who wants to think about, I'm not talking about it's just kumbaya and let's all be peaceful. Although, quite frankly, that decision could be made tomorrow. Now, does it mean that we get violence and this ability to dominate one another and this desire to compete and to be above and outrace each other? Are we going to get that out of our systems? I don't see how, but I want to.
Well,
Yeah,
Chuck,
yeah,
that was the 13 questions. How
All
I don't know, how was the experience? What did you think of it?
I enjoyed it because they, it made me think, even though, I kind of argued with the premise of almost every question. Maybe that's got something to do with who I am. But it made me think about some stuff that is not often spoken about in general terms. And, I appreciate you guys, putting up with me and not falling asleep while I'm, droning on about this stuff. But I tried to be as serious and direct about everything that I could, and I hope that that this is interesting and entertaining to your listeners. And you guys said, support content supporters. You guys need to support these guys. They're doing a very interesting piece of work here, and it is something that I don't know if I would have thought of it. It is original to my understanding. And look, value for value. You're getting value out of this. I say support these guys. As you should anybody that's creating independent content that doesn't have a corporate sponsor. This is what needs to be done. So I leave it at that.
It's very kind words, Chuck. Thank you.
And Chuck, if people want more information about you or track you down on the interwebs, what's the best place to find you?
Well, not a very inventive name, but Ochelli.com. That's my last name, OCHELLI.com. And 'tis a Sicilian name, although I am Sicilian and Irish, but you'll hear me pontificate about that on the show if you listen to any of the podcasts that I put out. It's also an online radio station, and I usually do 5 nights a week. I'm skipping tonight, but I usually do 5 nights a week on there. And we may cover news, we may cover conspiracy theory, we may cover history, we may cover just open calls, whatever it is on your mind, if you want. And I do that 5 nights a week from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, usually. And I also produce some other shows over there. We're going to add Donald Jeffries to the lineup. I already produced 2 shows with Aaron Franz. Popcorn Politics is on hold right now, but that's Dylan Wade's podcast, which I also produce. But anyway, all that stuff is over at Ochelli.com. And if you just look for Ochelli, I'm pretty much the only guy that you find. But if you just drop that into a search, you can find that. But my website's the best place to go.
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo,
Why
what?
is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo,
Why is
what?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii, yo, what?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.